Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and I hope we'll be able to explore how I've done some of my paintings and give you some insight into how I became an artist. Not close enough? But should I say that again? Anyway, how do we start, John?
Well, we're going to go chronologically, series by series.
Yes.
And we're going to actually start with some childhood. You want to comment on your childhood work?
Yes, I could. I remember as a young, I think I was a teenager, very young teenager, and I started drawing with a pencil on paper, and I did quite a good likeness of my sister, and I thought, I wish I had saved that. You know, that was when I was living in Port Alberni, and I remember always that it led on to me wanting to connect with people, and through my drawing and through working through learning about painting and how to connect. And so that early start with that drawing had led to a painting like this, which came from, I did watercolors. I started with watercolor, and I went to Hawaii when I was the very first time that I went to Hawaii. And I noticed that I made cartoons about the people on the beach because they were all looking at their phones. And I thought, well, what a shame, And so I did some cartoons about the people that were there. And this drawing of a young woman with the towel tossed across her shoulders, she was much more interested in swimming than looking at a phone. And so those cartoons led to, many years later, this kind of painting. And I still do go back and forth from doing many different subjects. Still life. I love that. If somebody gives me a big bouquet of flowers, I love to paint them. So they've shown many of them here. And where were we going next? Are we going to talk about these landscapes?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to the mid-'80s now.
So I call these classical landscapes. They're me trying to recreate nature, and this is something I wrote about these kind of paintings. These paintings came from the days when I would go outside with my big watercolor papers and my watercolor paints, and being there, looking intently at the scene, would imprint it in my memory. The breeze, the smells, the people nearby who would be picnicking or tossing a ball, all that fed the pleasure of the moment. These memories, they would surround me in the studio when I launched a big new canvas, which I would take from the watercolor I did in the outdoors. I would bring it back to the studio and do a canvas. And in this sort of fashion at that time, that was the way I was painting in the 80s and early 90s. So I just happened to have written that. And John has a catalog that he's going to pass around of some, when I began going to the Emma Lake workshop in northern Saskatchewan in the summers, and met a lot of professional artists there. And that would be in the middle of the summer every year for many years. And the very first time I went to Emma Lake, I flew to Saskatoon, hung around the bus station until the bus came, and I took the bus up to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And I met up with a very good friend, Robert Christie, who was to become a very good friend over the years, a wonderful sculptor and painter, and he taught me a lot about what painting's all about. And so these are some of the earlier attempts for me to get connected with the world. And this is a monoprint that I worked with Peter Braun, who had a print shop down in Granville Island in Vancouver. And he would put these, I would paint on a piece of glass, and then he would put the paper, wet paper on it and put it through the press. And you get a different impression than if you'd actually painted a watercolor. So that's what that was all about. It was exciting because you never knew exactly what was going to happen when it finally came through the press.
Before we move on, do you want to mention your hand-bound catalog? Pass that over.
The one that, these two catalogs? Yeah. Okay. Well, at one point, I decided that I had a lot of time, and I decided I would make a book. And this one was that I had the book printed, but I can't believe that I actually hand-bound these books. I have instructions about where you put the needle in and where you pull it out, and then these were printed watercolors of my watercolors printed. And then I wanted to give an example of what one of these books would be. Well, I wrote about in the book about how landscape was a wonderful subject matter for a painter because it was always there and it was always changing. And that's the writing in there is about that. And then this book, I did many different versions of this book. And this one is one where I tipped in actual real watercolors. And I can show you the difference between where those printed colors, you never get the real thing that you get with watercolor. And so these are all hand done by me. And when I was putting them in, you have to put little sticky things on them to get them to stick. And I thought, oh my God, this is a lot of work. I had to put so many little tabs to get them in there. But I hope you get a chance to look at this because I love watercolor and it's been a great inspiration for me. You can see in so much of my painting, you can see the influence of having started with watercolor. Now this is a lake painting, and it shows you what I like about not being detailed in your work, not, making everything perfect. And what I like about painting is that you can get the energy of your brushstrokes. And that's what I I like about the sort of sketchiness of any of the brush strokes and putting the color in like I do, which is different than these paintings, which I had a process of painting them in layers of thin paint. And the color would come out quite different than mixing the color blue or green. And these ones I painted by, well, first of all, I'd stretch a canvas on a board, or sometimes I would use a big piece of foam and I'd tape it up and then damp it all down, and then it would dry and stretch and be all nice and flat and smooth. And then I chose to take a color and thin it out with water. This is acrylic paint I'm talking about. And I would find that I could get a different effect by very, very thin layers of paint put on, and then they dry, and the color would be different than these kind of bright colors as they are. And you have to get the paint at a certain point, many layers, but then you want it to be wet when you put in the things that are going to represent a boat or a strip of land, and then as they get, I went to this workshop in northern Saskatchewan. Like I might have mentioned that before, that I went for many years. I'm sure my family noticed that my husband and daughter there, they must have thought I was crazy that I would drive across the BC, Alberta, go up north in Saskatchewan and end up there for 2 weeks. And anyway, I got sidetracked by this. But these paintings were done with thin layers of paint, and I would do them. And at this workshop, I got to go and sit and look at the lake every afternoon after I'd been working in the studio. And it would be interesting just to go down and look at the lake and how the colors changed. In the afternoon, there might be bright, light colors on the lake. And then as the afternoon got later, you would see the darker colors. And it's so hard to paint the color of water. And I felt that by layering the paint in many thin layers and doing these darker versions as the evenings got on and it got darker. And I kind of loved the way you could put in these minimal examples or minimal representations of a boat in the water, but you had to do it when it was wet, and you had to get the land and then get the moon and things like that reflecting. I thought that it was kind of calming. I felt, it became something that, fortunately, that the Oeno Gallery decided that they would show these paintings because they felt that they brought a certain kind of calm with them. And when you sit and look at them, maybe you'll get the feeling that I had of going to look at this lake every afternoon from this busy workshop where I had lots of buckets of paint on a table, and everybody was fighting for space in the studio, and the roof of the studio leaked a lot sometimes, and you didn't want to be in the place where it leaked. Now, this is a different example of my painting. And this kind of paint, this is what I call a road trip painting. And it's where I painted the ground in a color that I found interesting, like I like that green very much. And then putting on other abstract marks that indicate maybe you're on a road trip or whatever. And I've developed the feeling when I was at this workshop where I was surrounded by people like Dorothy Knowles and Bill Parahudoff, who would come to every workshop. They would come around in the evenings and talk to all the artists very generously, and to say, oh, I like what you're doing with that, and then, oh, maybe you could push that a bit more. And it was quite an experience to be able to, that was a different time period, but I developed this series of road trip paintings, and it was because I had the experience in painting beside these artists who could choose whatever color they wanted, and they could put it on the canvas, and it would be abstract, but you could still get an idea of whether you might feel like you're driving along a road and having a pleasant experience. And I did many different paintings like that, but that one's a little different than a lot of them. So that was, oh, and that one too. This is where I like to draw with the brush and make it minimal. And there's a road, and there's a group of trees, and there's another bush, and there's a cloud, and there's purple, and with contrast with the green. And yeah, I love doing that.
Pat, when you did these road trips, were you a fast driver or a slow driver?
No, when I'm not a fast driver. I don't even drive anymore. But that's because in Vancouver you can hardly find a place to park. So anyway, no, I wasn't a fast driver. And my husband is a faster driver than I am, but fortunately he's a good driver, so I still get to go around and see different things. Now these are the Black Velvet series that I did. You know how you used to go to craft stores and see these little paintings that were painted on flat grounds, and I thought, well, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it differently. And I did the black grounds, and once again I did many layers of paint to get the dark black color, and then I would put marks on. This is because of the painting by these abstract painters and being envious of them and being able to do what they wanted with color. And so these things are representing something that you might imagine as a flower, or they could be the different sort of thing that you might see driving down the road fast. Anyway, I did those, and I found them to be kind of a joke, in a way, because they were making fun of the things that people used to really like, and doing my own version of that. And that was, it was a pleasure that the Oeno Gallery would choose to show them. I've been very lucky in that way.
What period of your life were these made?
I don't know what the dates are.
Dana, what year is that painted?
It's 2022.
So
I'm sorry, what date?
2022.
2022. Why? Do you feel like it's depressing because it's dark?
I love it.
Yeah? Oh, do you? Yeah, I love it too. Yeah, and I love putting down the colors that pop out because of the black ground. And some of them have things in them that look like might be a fence or a piece of a tree that you see as you're driving by.
Did you want to cover anything else for Still Lake, or were you ready for some questions?
Oh, yes, I could have some questions.
Good. Yeah, please raise your hand and we'll take a few questions. Speak up, please.
Me? I wanted to ask you about Oeno Lake, because there's the lake, northern Saskatchewan, far from so much.
Yes,
Yeah. So many amazing artists who were taught there,
yeah.
and my brother being one of them.
Yes, Greg.
Greg.
Yeah, that's Greg there. Yeah, I made so many good friends there, yeah.
But what made it so special, such a special place?
Well, I think it was partly because the artists there were not nasty to each other. They were very supportive. You know, they were encouraging to each other. And so that was the beauty of it. That was why it worked so well. That the artists there would be supportive of each other and try and encourage people to, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay.
Billy was there too.
Yes. So did you find it like that?
Yeah, exactly. I've been to other workshops where everybody's competing with each other
Yes.
and working for the critics were milling about.
Right. And wanting to get noticed by the critics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that Emily was really special.
It was. And I benefited from it so much. And I've got lots of paintings that were developed because of that experience of being at the Emma Lake there.
Working in a little studio space would be about half of this.
I know. And
But some amazing work was produced there.
And we had nice little old cabins that we stayed in, and it was very, very cute. And
Stephen and I, for the first time, what you think is when I met you, the first time I went with Stephen, and we had one of those horrible little cabins right next to Rita Cowley.
oh, really?
Yeah, and she was very special.
Yes.
But yeah, it was, I think the first 24 hours were hard, and after that it was bliss.
Yes. Yeah. It was quite a unique experience. I was fortunate that I went the first time, and then I got caught up in going to it every summer for a couple of weeks. Any other questions?
Any other question for you?
I have a question about the still lake
Yes.
pieces behind you. I was wondering if it is a real place or a place in your heart, and how you made them.
Well, they're from the Emma Lake workshop, where I would go in the afternoons and look at the lake. And there was a strip of land across that you could see, and the water of the lake, and then the shore line, and sometimes there were canoes there. And, well, what was the other part of the question?
What was your technique? You got this beautiful twilight.
Well, with these paintings, I painted with thin layers of paint, and as the darker ones, it took many layers of different colors of tint in the paint, thin layers, and I'd let them dry and then put another one on, and they got quite rich. You know, like when you look at water, you can't really say what color it is sometimes. It's a very rich color. And I found that doing these paintings, and then when they were still damp, put it on the marks of the land across. And it's Emma Lake. They're really inspired by Emma Lake. Being there and going to look at after working during the afternoon and the day, and then going down to the beach from time to time and looking at them and getting inspired by the subtle differences as the day went on. You know, it would be sometimes in the afternoon the water would look bright white colors, and and turquoise, which you wouldn't think in northern Saskatchewan you would be like that, but you could see those kind of colors. And then as the day darkened, it would get richer, and it was very calming to go and look at the lake and try to think about how could I paint that. And many people have painted water and done it very realistically and very well, but I wanted something that would be more of a abstraction, and it could be a lake anywhere, and how much we in here in Canada, we love the lakes and the water. And I live by the ocean, so I love the ocean too.
Oh, 2 more questions. Claudia, do you want to go first?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Pat. I'm interested in your 2022 Black Velvet.
Yes.
I find that as I looked at them, I love them, but I find that they defy anything one has learned or taught or read about or researched about composition.
Well, you know what? I went to the Glasgow School of Art when I was living in Scotland. When my husband was a consul there, appointed to be a consul in Glasgow. And so I was lucky to go along with him. And I went one day a week to this Glasgow School of Art and to climb up the stairs to the studio at the top. And the artist, his name was William Crosby, and he would put out a still life for us to paint. And he said, I had to unlearn everything I was taught at art school. And he said, you just go and do it, paint and keep painting, and you'll get the idea of it eventually. So that's what I did. I was lucky to be able to carry on doing that after my children got out of school and I had more time, and I was able to
It's a sense
contribute. Pardon me?
It's a sense of soul discovery when you break all the rules, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, no, it is fun to do that, to try and do your own thing. Yes.
One more question. Sorry, Pat, are you done?
Yes.
Great. One more question.
Okay.
Okay, Bill?
I was just wondering, when you do your painting, it's kind of a technical question, but are you painting a number of pictures all at the same time, or how do you approach your series when you do them?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I usually have a few of them on the go, and I would, because of the layers of the paint that you have to put on, and so I would have. It depends. Like, I had a bigger studio as I got older, and I had more room to be able to start more than one at a time. And so originally I would do one painting at a time, but then these ones I did more than one at a time. And each one would influence the next one. Yeah.
2 more questions. We have Yvonne. I know Scott has a question too.
So when you were in Scotland,
Yes.
what year was that? More or less.
Well, that was when were we in Scotland, David?
65 to 68.
65 to 68. Yeah.
Because when I was teaching in England and Hull, we had quite a few students from Scotland, and they were really quite also contrary to the traditional teachings of.
Were they?
And it was partly because at that time the British art scene was really competing with the American art scene, and they wanted to develop their own voice.
Uh-huh.
So the idea of like color field painting was the beginning, was really happening at that time. And that was also layers and layers of color. And their reaction was that they wanted to develop their own sort of formal visual identity to the American artists. So there was that sense of competing, competing, what's the word?
With other artists?
Yeah,
The Scots always have their elbows up.
but it was definitely coming from northern England
Oh, yes.
and Scotland.
Mhm.
So that would make sense.
Well, I went to the museums in Scotland, and I was very influenced by Scottish painting. And when you talked about that, it just reminded me that how much I loved a lot of the art that I looked at there.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to art school. When I wanted to go to, when I thought, oh, maybe now I can go to art school. And then I thought, I've done so much painting already that I don't want anybody telling me what to do. And so that I just carried on painting. And that way, I guess I was influenced by that artist in Scotland saying, just paint.
You succeeded very well.
Thank you.
Scott has a question for you.
Yeah, I know all your paintings are like babies, you know, you've given birth to, and I'm sure you love them all. But I'm wondering if, you know, when you look over the course of your career, if there's one particular show or one particular painting that you think is your best work, or the one you love the most, or was the most fun to do, or speak to something like that.
Well, I have a picture of myself standing beside this painting I did of a friend of mine. Well, he was a professional photographer, and he took he took photographs of all of my paintings as the years went by. And now how does that relate to what you're asking? Oh, I know, because I have, when he would take photographs of my paintings, I would put the images in a book. And I have this book that goes through all the decades of all these paintings. And I'm so happy when I look through those books and think, oh my God, they're quite beautiful. And I feel fortunate to have been able to do that. Yes. And I can't pick anyone that's more favorite of mine. Right.
Well, thank you all very much for coming, but I want to particularly thank you, Pat, and David, and Greer, for making the trek from Vancouver. It's a long journey, I know, for you to come here, and we really, really appreciate you coming. It makes a big difference for us to be able to spend time with you, hear your thoughts about the paintings, and it's a very enriching experience for us all. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.